from Nurturing Motherhood. Today I'm going to talk to you a bit about swaddling your new baby. So swaddling, tightly wrapping a baby in a blanket or a sheet, is an age-old practice used for soothing and settling babies to sleep. It's been used for thousands of years. But it does kind of polarise opinions. Some experts recommend it and others are not so keen on the idea. A baby enjoys being swaddled because they're so used to being in the newborn fetal position. When they're inside your womb, they are enclosed in the walls of your womb. They don't have any sort of space for their arms to freely flail about. And then when they're born and they're placed to sleep on their back, their arms are out of their own control at first. They can't control their hand movements. And their flailing arms can trigger off their startle reflex. You've seen babies that sort of do this shuddering startle reflex, and that can often wake them up when they're asleep, when their arms are flailing. You're going to be the best judge of whether your baby enjoys being swaddled or not. Some babies love it and others really fight it. They don't enjoy it. Let's just have a think about some of the advantages and disadvantages of swaddling. It can help a baby to sleep a little bit more deeply. As I said, they were less likely to waken as they startle. If it's used regularly, a swaddle can be a trigger for baby to sleep. So if you always at bedtime wrap your baby in a swaddle wrap, then that can be their message to say it's bedtime. It can help to calm down a baby that's really fractious or overstimulated. Can particularly be helpful for babies that are a little bit oversensitive and suffer from sensory overload, when their hands and their arms are giving them sensory messages and it's all a bit too much for them to cope with. They just like to be, their hands and their arms to be close to them so they don't get overloaded with these messages. The disadvantages are that it can be used on occasions as a substitute for human contact. You just want your baby to go to sleep and put them down, so you swaddle them tightly in the place of cuddling your baby in arms, which obviously is preferable wherever that is possible. If a baby is swaddled, you can miss their early feeding cues, because those early cues when they're hungry, of their fingers coming up to their mouth, they're sucking on their fingers. If their arms are tightly swaddled, you may miss that. You need to be cautious when you're swaddling a baby that they don't overheat. Obviously you've got several layers of blanket around a baby there, and it is fairly tight, so you must use a very, very thin blanket, or a muslin is ideal, because there's not much thickness there and the risk of overheating is less. Also need to be careful with tight swaddling of the baby's hips, so it's right for baby to have completely free movement, so very loose swaddling at the bottom, so those little legs can froggy up into the froggy position. Don't swaddle a baby with their legs down straight in a kind of standing position. They need to have the freedom for their hips to bend and their knees to come up to help avoid the risk of hip dysplasia. Some babies don't like it. They don't like the feeling of being restricted, and they'll fight a swaddle and sort of do their best to get the blanket off. As I said, you're the best judge of whether your baby enjoys it and whether it works for you or not. It's best to start swaddling if your baby is very young. So if your baby is already 2 or 3 months old, I wouldn't start at that point, so start in the early weeks. It's also sensible to stop swaddling your baby once they get to the point that they can roll over independently, because you imagine that they're in their cot and they roll over onto their stomach. If their arms are swaddled, then they don't have their hands free to push up or help themselves get back onto their back, or to move freely in order to clear their airway if their airway is blocked by being on their tummy. So once your baby can roll or is very close to rolling, you need to stop swaddling them. Never swaddle a baby if they are unwell or if they're feverish with a temperature, but again because of the risk of overheating. Make sure you're using a thin fabric, like a muslin cloth or just a sheet, rather than a thick blanket. Not to do the swaddle too tight across their chest, because of you don't want to restrict their chest or their breathing, so you should be able to get a couple of fingers easily into the blanket on their chest. The tightness should be across their tummy and across their arms, and then again, as I've said, their hips need to be free. Never swaddle a baby if you're bed sharing, again because of the risk of overheating. If they're next to you with your body heat and your bed clothes, a swaddle is likely to make them overheat. It's best not to start swaddling until you're really confident with breastfeeding because of missing the early feeding cues. It can interfere with the initiation of breastfeeding, so be cautious of that too. Never put the fabric of a swaddle wrap or blanket over baby's head or over their face. Just up to their neck is perfect. Again, you don't want them to overheat. If you've got something over their head, they are much more likely to overheat. You'll find there's many brands of swaddle wrap and products for swaddling available, specific products to buy. In my opinion, these aren't really necessary. A square blanket or sheet or muslin will do the job perfectly well. So don't feel you have to invest in the swaddle wrap. So let me show you a safe way to swaddle a baby step by step so that you can try it and see whether your baby enjoys it or not. So to swaddle a baby, you want a large, preferably square piece of fabric, thin fabric. This blanket is a little thicker than I would ideally use for a real baby to swaddle. A giant muslin is absolutely ideal. Large muslin squares are perfect because they're very thin fabric and baby won't overheat. But I'm going to show you with this blanket because it's what I have to hand. So lay your square blanket out with a corner at the top, so you've got a diamond shape with a pointy top here. Then you're going to fold that top corner down so that you've got a triangle and a straight top edge. Then you want to pick your baby up and pop your baby down on your blanket or on your muslin with that top edge level with the top of their shoulders, just at their neck. And tuck your baby's hand just onto their chest like this, and then you want to get one side and pull over the fabric. If you pull it over straight, then you're going to have quite a loose top edge with the risk of fabric getting into the baby's airways. So I like to pull slightly downwards across the chest. Pull the fabric straight across, fairly tight over baby's arm, downwards so that there's no fabric near the face. And then smooth that round. You can have this arm out or in, doesn't matter at this stage. Smooth this round behind them, roll them slightly, make sure it's nice and smooth so that they're not lying on any creases or lumps. Roll them back. So that's now tucked and kind of secured behind their back. Then you want to go to the bottom of your blanket to fold that up. Now this is just loose, it's just sort of closing off the bottom of the parcel really, there's no tightness here. So you can just fold that up slightly depending on how large your blanket is. It'll depend how far up it comes. So you might find that it comes up quite high, so you just need to be cautious that the fabric is nowhere near baby's face. Fold it up slightly. Tuck the other arm across, and then you want to get the other side, and again pull it over quite tightly, not straight but down at an angle, and then I hold that there and pull the rest of it over in more of a straight angle, straight across, and that all then gets tucked behind baby's back again. Roll to the side, smooth it all round and underneath baby's back and bottom. So there you've got your little burrito baby. But all the tightness is across this part, so across their arms and across their tummy, not on their chest. That's very free. You should be able to get a couple of fingers in there easily, so you know that their breathing isn't restricted. And their legs here, it's difficult to see with this thick blanket, but this baby's legs have got free movement. They can froggy up, so those hips are not restricted in any way. That's how to swaddle your baby.